Yeah, but so there's still, I mean, it's crazy too because there's still more happening in court. Like, I mean, everything is still active even though we're not hearing about it as much anymore. And the people may be fatigued like we talked about prior to.
I'm not sure. I don't buy for a minute that he's going to prison without getting out of here somewhere and stashing $2 billion or whatever. I think he has that kind of power, meaning Sean himself. But remember, it goes a lot deeper than that.
The courtroom crackled with energy as Sean Diddy Combs, once the untouchable kingpin of hip-hop and business, entered, his presence alone an undeniable force. But this wasn't the stage he'd built for himself over decades of fame, wealth, and power. This was a federal courtroom, and the man who once commanded the music industry with unshakable confidence now walked in wearing the beige uniform of a detainee. The transformation was almost cinematic. Diddy, whose style and swagger had been celebrated for years, now appeared visibly aged, his hair streaked with gray, his face etched with the wear of confinement. Yet, there was a flicker of that old bravado. He scanned the room like it was his domain, locking eyes with reporters and even offering a nod here and there. A man so used to controlling the narrative, he seemed to be silently daring anyone to underestimate him.
Which, again, the judge kind of made this a point, too, talking about, okay, well, if we're going to continue to do sidebars each and every single time that a prospective juror has to talk about a sensitive topic, that could take up a lot of time. But again, the defense and the government both seem pretty confident that they'll still be able to kind of get it going in a quick pace. This isn't unusual to do in these types of high-profile cases. So that was pretty much just the topics about,
But the spectacle didn't stop at his entrance. The courtroom was buzzing over the latest development. Diddy had officially rejected a plea deal from prosecutors. This wasn't some quiet behind-the-scenes negotiation falling apart. No, he stood in court and made it clear to the judge himself. The plea was off the table. Whatever the government had offered, a reduced sentence, a chance to avoid the years-long spectacle of a trial, Diddy wasn't interested. According to those close to the case, it wasn't just confidence. It was defiance. He didn't just want to fight. He wanted the world to see him do it. For a man who built his empire on spectacle, this trial was shaping up to be his most dramatic performance yet. And what a stage it will be. The charges against him are staggering. The word racketeering alone invokes images of shadowy enterprises and unthinkable power plays. That's before even getting into the allegations of coercion, manipulation, and conspiracy that paint a picture of a man who didn't just thrive in the music industry, but allegedly weaponized his influence in ways that feel ripped straight from a thriller. Prosecutors claim he orchestrated events, so orchestrated they had their own chilling nickname. Events involving intricate planning, high-profile locations, and an entourage of enablers who allegedly worked around the clock to meet his demands. These aren't just accusations, they're a narrative of a man who, if the charges are to be believed, lived in a world where rules didn't apply.
Or not really the judge. The government didn't go into too many details about the extent of the plea offer, but one thing that they had said was pretty much that under the plea offer, he would be facing less time than he's facing if he would have gone to trial. So when the allocution portion came, Diddy stood up. The judge kind of read him everything that he had needed to read to him, just about whether or not he was of sound mind, whether or not...
The courtroom proceedings reflected the gravity of these accusations. Jurors haven't even been seated yet, and already the legal teams are sparring over every detail, from the questionnaire that potential jurors must fill out to the very clothes Diddy will be allowed to wear. Yes, even his wardrobe has become a legal battleground. The judge ruled he could swap his prison uniform for business casual attire during the trial, a decision that sparked whispers about how Diddy's image might play into his defense. 5 button-down shirts, 5 pairs of pants, 2 pairs of shoes without laces. It's a far cry from the designer. Suits and jewelry he once flaunted, but it's enough to remind the jury that this is still a man who wants to find cool.
As far as the plea offer that came up in the last hearing where the government said we did offer him a deal or an offer, I should say, and that he rejected it. And now it's official, and he said it to the court as well, too. He stood up, he said that he consulted with this about his attorneys, and it seems like they're planning, or not even seems like they are, they're rolling the dice by going to...
Yet, the courtroom wasn't just notable for Diddy's appearance or the legal wranglings. What struck many was the absence of his family. In earlier hearings, his mother, his sons, even his young daughter had shown up to support him. Today, the seats behind him were empty, save for one lone associate wearing a sweatshirt that seemed to make a quiet statement of its own. Was it fatigue, a strategic decision, or something else entirely? For a man who built his public image on family and loyalty, the empty seats raised questions that no one seemed eager to answer. But if Diddy felt the void, he didn't show it. His demeanor was calm, almost unnervingly so. When asked by the judge if he understood the risks of rejecting the plea deal, he didn't hesitate. Yes, I do. The words hung in the air, a declaration of his readiness to go to war with the federal government. And make no mistake, this trial is war. The stakes couldn't be higher. If convicted, Diddy faces the possibility of spending the rest of his life behind bars. But for someone like him, it's not just about freedom, it's about legacy, about control, about whether the empire he's spent decades building could crumble under the weight of these allegations.
Jesse, we've been talking about this, just how confident the defense appears that, they could get off on these charges. They could be acquitted, or possibly, who knows what could happen, just because, again, you are rolling the dice. This really does feel like just kind of like, just kind of like a gambling a little bit with Diddy's life in a sense, just because, if you're offered maybe X amount of time versus this huge amount of time, which could be.
The courtroom drama didn't end with the plea deal. Behind closed doors, discussions about the jury selection process hinted at just how high profile this trial will be. The challenge isn't just finding jurors who don't know who Diddy is. That's impossible. The real trick is finding people who can set aside everything they've heard, read, or assumed about him. 50 potential jurors a day will be questioned, with both sides hoping to uncover biases before the trial even begins. And while the defense and prosecution are presenting this as a straightforward process, insiders say tensions are already running high. Can a fair jury even be seated in a case this explosive? Or is this trial destined to be a media circus from start to finish?
Bars, you would think possibly, it's the federal government building a case against you. Maybe you would go for the lesser offer, but again, that would be having to admit that he had did something wrong. And the defense has always maintained that he is innocent, he has done nothing wrong, that this is just, these are just ex-girlfriends that are mad, like just all these types of things that the defense is.
And then there's the issue of the gag order. The defense has been quick to point fingers, accusing one of the alleged attorneys of violating professional ethics by participating in a documentary about Diddy's life. The judge, clearly irritated, didn't mince words. He reminded everyone involved that this is a federal trial, not a reality show, and warned that further breaches could result in consequences. But the damage may already be done. The whispers, the leaks, the rumors, they're all swirling around this case, threatening to shape public opinion before opening statements have even begun.
And the judge said that, he seemed to be taking this kind of matter seriously. Now, I will just kind of preface it and say it. I haven't seen the documentary, but it's not out of the realm, or it's not out of the norm that she even went on this documentary as well, too, because she had previously gone on another documentary and kind of talked about her client's accusations against Diddy as well, too. So I was surprised that they brought up this particular documentary. Again, I don't know the extent of what she had said, but the defense seemed very annoyed in a way. And
for Diddy, the stakes go far beyond the courtroom. His reputation, his businesses, his relationships, all of it is on the line. And yet, he seems determined to press forward, rejecting deals, expanding his legal team, and preparing for what promises to be one of the most closely watched trials in recent memory. But what's driving this determination? Is it confidence in his innocence? A belief that his legal team can dismantle the prosecution's case piece by piece? Or is it something darker? A refusal to cede control, even in the face of overwhelming odds.
And so the judge, again, seemed to be taking that matter pretty seriously and just pretty much said that, everyone, the attorneys, the witnesses' attorneys, the accusers' attorneys, they all have to adhere to these professional rules. They all have to adhere to this professional conduct. And if this continues and if more things are said that get onto the judge's radar.
And while Diddy's defense team appears confident, they're up against a formidable opponent. The prosecution has assembled a team that includes some of the top legal minds in the country, including attorneys who've taken down other high-profile figures. They're not just building a case against Diddy, they're crafting a narrative. One that paints him not as a misunderstood mogul, but as the mastermind of a sprawling enterprise that thrived on exploitation and fear. And they're prepared to go to extraordinary lengths to prove it. The trial hasn't even started, and already the tension is palpable. Every decision, every motion, every piece of evidence feels like it could tip the scales. And as the courtroom gears up for jury selection, one thing is clear. The battle for Diddy's future is just beginning. The question now is how far will both sides go to secure victory? Because in a case this high stakes, the truth is often just one piece of the puzzle. The real story lies in the power plays, the strategies, and the secrets that have yet to be revealed.
And he is very, very dominant. Like, he wants to control the situation. He wants to control his inner circle. He wants to make everyone have a good time and enjoy his parties. And so, it is scary because you think you know, this person or possibly his social network or the people he's around could make or break your career.
And just like that, the courtroom drama transforms into a high-stakes chess match, with every move scrutinized, every piece on the board carrying the weight of a legacy teetering on the edge of collapse. But don't mistake this for just another celebrity trial. This is uncharted territory. The prosecution isn't just coming for Sean Diddy Combs' freedom, they're coming for his empire, his reputation, the very foundation of the myth he's built. And here's the kicker. The deeper you look, the more it starts to feel like this trial isn't just about what Diddy did or didn't do. It's about what the industry allowed him to become. Behind closed doors, the defense team is reportedly scrambling to fortify their strategy. They've already brought in heavyweights like Brian Steele, a lawyer known for handling explosive racketeering cases, and whispers suggest even more reinforcements are on the way. The defense's argument? That Diddy's wild lifestyle, whatever you want to call it, was consensual, a product of the culture he existed in. But here's the problem. Culture doesn't exonerate you when the allegations start piling up like this. And the prosecution? Well, they seem to be treating this case as a message not just to Diddy, but to an entire industry that's long thrived on power imbalances and silence.
That they will be adding 2 defense attorneys. We only thought initially it was 1, but one thing that stood out to me when Mark Agnifilo was talking about this was he said that these defense attorneys are in the courtroom right now. I didn't see Mark Garagos in that courtroom, but what I did see is 2 defense attorneys that have been there when Brian Steele came on board, and those 2 defense attorneys were Nicole Westmoreland.
And then there's the jury selection process, a pressure cooker of its own. How do you find 12 people who can sit in judgment of a man as famous as Diddy without preconceived notions? The prosecution wants jurors who can stomach the details of the allegations and see through the glitz and glamour. The defense wants people who might buy into the idea that this is just another case of a celebrity being targeted. But the reality is, both sides know what's at stake here. This trial isn't just about Diddy, it's about what happens when someone who's spent decades operating above the rules finally finds himself under the microscope.
I don't know the consequences of what that could have been. So I didn't really talk about it. I should have gone to the police. I should have said something other than to my agent. I'm just thankful that there was somebody there. There was somebody at that party who helped me, because I could have ended up in a really bad situation.
What's even more chilling is the alleged infrastructure behind it all. The prosecution's case isn't just about Diddy's actions. It's about the machine that made it all possible. Former employees, business associates, and even a few ex-friends are reportedly being called to testify about the inner workings of his empire. These aren't just accusations of bad behavior, they're accusations of systematic planning. We're talking about travel arrangements, logistics, and a network of people who allegedly enabled him every step of the way. If true, it paints a picture of not just one man's abuses, but an entire operation designed to shield him from accountability. But here's where it gets even murkier. Insiders are whispering about an alleged inner circle of loyalists who may have actively worked to suppress both witnesses and evidence. These aren't just nameless employees. Some of them are said to be high-level executives in his companies, people with decades-long ties to Diddy's business empire. Prosecutors reportedly have emails, phone records, and even financial transactions that suggest coordinated efforts to keep certain individuals quiet. It's not just about looking the other way. It's about actively protecting the man at the center of it all. If these claims hold up, it could mean an avalanche of additional charges, not only for Diddy, but also for those who stood by him.
Well, first of all, I can only imagine how sloppy Sean Combs was with evidence when he got busted with those 2 machine guns or 3 machine guns with the altered serial numbers. So I really don't trust Sean Combs or the people around him's ability to properly cover up anything. So I envision that you're going to see a trial, payments from his Amex for flights for people, straight payments directly from his company to people.
And then there's the money trail. Investigators are said to be focusing on payments made to key individuals over the years, some labeled as consulting fees, others as gifts or bonuses. These payments, prosecutors suggest, were more than they appeared, potentially hush money disguised as legitimate transactions. The sums involved are eye-watering, reportedly stretching into the millions, and they point to a system designed to maintain loyalty at all costs. One former associate, according to rumors, is prepared to testify that they were offered a life-changing amount of money to disappear after witnessing something they shouldn't have. If this testimony comes to light, it could blow the case wide open. But perhaps the most damning revelation involves the lengths allegedly taken to destroy evidence. Rumors are swirling about hard drives wiped clean, phones mysteriously lost, and even entire offices cleared out during late-night operations. Prosecutors are said to be building a timeline of these actions, tying them directly to key moments when allegations first began to surface. If they can prove that evidence was deliberately destroyed to obstruct justice, it would add yet another layer to the mountain of charges Diddy is already facing. The question isn't just whether these actions happened, it's who ordered them and how far they went to protect the man at the top.
And then the time frame is important because this happened in hotels, in places that have surveillance, that there's records that could be consistent with his testimony about when he alleges that these parties took place. He probably has his own information about who attended the events. When you're somebody like Sean Combs and you're such a celebrity and you're engaged in this type of behavior, people around you are memorializing it's.
But let's not forget the wild card, the victims. The women who've come forward risking everything to speak out are the heart of this case. And while some have chosen anonymity, others are stepping into the light, ready to face the man they say controlled their lives. These are not just witnesses, they're survivors whose stories could tip the scales. And their testimonies, they're expected to be gut-wrenching, detailed accounts that cut through the defense's narrative like a knife. The prosecution knows that if they can make the jury feel the weight of these stories, no amount of legal maneuvering will save Diddy. Still, the defense isn't backing down. They're reportedly planning to argue that the accusers have ulterior motives: money, fame, revenge. It's a classic playbook. But will it work in an era where the public is increasingly skeptical of victim-blaming tactics? More importantly, will it resonate with a jury that's being asked to separate fact from fiction in one of the most sensationalized cases in recent memory? It's a gamble. But then again, this entire trial feels like one giant roll of the dice.
Now we've done 3 others where we've laid out the prosecution case. This time, we're talking specifically, what is Diddy's defense? And we decided to test it with a mock jury, and it is fascinating.
It is absolutely fascinating, keeping in mind that the real jury will be sitting down to do this. The trial starts first week in May.
And while the courtroom battles rage on, the ripple effects are already being felt far beyond those walls. Industry insiders are quietly distancing themselves from Diddy. Brands are reevaluating partnerships, and even some of his closest allies are starting to go radio silent. The man who once seemed untouchable is suddenly finding himself very alone, and yet, there's a strange irony in all of this. The very fame and fortune that once insulated him are now amplifying his downfall. Every revelation, every allegation, every whispered rumor is magnified 1,000-fold because of who he is. Meanwhile, the media circus surrounding the trial is reaching a fever pitch. Every day brings new headlines, new leaks, and new speculation. You've got reporters camped outside the courthouse, social media dissecting every detail, and commentators weighing in with their hot takes. And let's be real, for as much as people claim to be shocked or outraged, there's also a voyeuristic fascination at play. This isn't just a trial, it's a spectacle, a front-row seat to the unraveling of a man who once seemed larger than life.
It always feels like that, especially before federal trials, because you get to read the indictment, you have all the, not all, but you have much of what the prosecution is going to be.
But there's something additional.
Of their strategy.
There's something additional here. You're right that they hear about all of that, but what they're also hearing is these other lawsuits that have been filed by all these civil law firms.
But here's the thing. For all the noise, for all the drama, the real story lies in the shadows, in the unanswered questions, in the loose threads that are only starting to unravel. What did the people around Diddy know, and when did they know it? How deep does the alleged cover-up go? And perhaps most importantly, what does this case say about an industry that has long turned a blind eye to its own dark underbelly? Because make no mistake, this trial is bigger than Diddy. It's a reckoning not just for him, but for a culture that has allowed power and privilege to go unchecked for far too long. And as the case moves forward, one thing is becoming increasingly clear. This isn't just about what Diddy might have done. It's about what happens when the curtain is finally pulled back on an industry that thrives on secrets.
Case, you're hearing about all these videos with celebrities, not going to be part of the criminal case. And
Cassie video.
The Cassie video is going to be part.
Right.
We're going to get to that in a minute with the jury. But what we did was, number one, we showed them the the prosecution's case from one of our documentaries, and then we showed them the defense from the current documentary.
So, what's your take? Is this the beginning of the end for Diddy, or will his defense pull off the impossible? And what about the music industry as a whole? Are we finally seeing the cracks in a system that's been broken for decades? Drop your thoughts in the comments, and trust us, this story is far from over. See you in the next one.